Think about the last time you sat in a restaurant and took that first bite of something and just stopped. Not because it was complicated. Not because it had some rare ingredient you had never heard of. Just because it felt so much better than anything you had made at home. And you probably told yourself the same thing everyone tells themselves. The chef must be better. The ingredients must be fresher. The recipe must be different. But what if none of that was true? What if the restaurant was using the same chicken you buy at the same grocery store? What if the sauce was simpler than anything you have tried to make in your own kitchen? What if the secret ingredient was not in the food at all, but in your own brain, quietly rewriting your experience before you even picked up a fork? Because that is exactly what is happening. And once you understand it, the way you think about food, restaurants, cravings, and even your own home cooking will never be the same. In 1999, a group of psychologists ran an experiment that changed how scientists think about taste. They poured the same wine into 2 glasses. Same bottle. Same temperature. Same pour. Then they told one group of people the wine cost $5. They told the other group it cost $45. Both groups drank. Both groups rated it. And the group that believed they were drinking expensive wine did not just say it tasted better. Brain scans showed their brains actually processed more pleasure. The reward centers lit up more. The experience was genuinely different, not just in opinion, but in neurology. The wine did not change. The belief did. And the belief rewired the experience completely. This is the first thing you need to understand about restaurant food. Your brain does not taste food in isolation. It tastes food inside a story. And the story you are telling yourself about the meal changes the meal itself at a biological level. Before you even walk into a restaurant, your brain has already started working on you. You made a decision to go out. That decision alone carries weight. You got dressed. You traveled somewhere. You looked at a menu full of options. You waited. Maybe you smelled the place before you sat down. Every single one of those steps is building something inside your brain called anticipatory dopamine. Most people think dopamine is the chemical you get when something feels good. But that is only half the story. Dopamine actually releases before the reward. It releases when your brain expects one. So by the time that plate lands in front of you, your brain has already been marinating in pleasure chemicals for 20 minutes. The food has not touched your tongue, but your brain has already committed to enjoying it. That commitment changes everything that comes after. Now compare that to walking into your own kitchen. You open the fridge. You see the same vegetables you bought 3 days ago. No anticipation. No build-up. No story. Just food that needs to become dinner before you are too tired to care. Your brain has no runway. And without that runway, the experience never lifts off. But the restaurant is not done with you yet. Because the building itself is designed to change how your brain processes flavor. And most people have no idea this is happening. The lighting in a restaurant is not chosen for decoration. Warm, dim lighting triggers your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of your nervous system responsible for rest and relaxation. When your body shifts into that relaxed state, your senses open up. Your smell becomes sharper. Your taste becomes more sensitive. You become more present in the moment without even trying. Bright fluorescent light does the exact opposite. It keeps you alert and slightly tense. And tension closes your senses down. That is why food in a hospital cafeteria, under white fluorescent lights, always feels worse than it probably deserves. And why the same meal by candlelight feels like a completely different experience. Researchers at the University of Leicester found that background music changes how food tastes. When slow, calm music played in a restaurant, people stayed longer, ordered more, and rated the food higher than when fast music played. The restaurant did not change the recipe. It changed the pace. And pace changes perception. When you slow down, Your brain actually extracts more pleasure from each bite. When you rush, you consume without experiencing. The food enters your body, but barely registers in your mind. And then, there is the smell. The moment you walk through the door of a restaurant, your nose sends signals directly to your limbic system, which is the part of your brain that controls emotion and memory. That warm bread smell, that garlic hitting butter in a hot pan, that coffee drifting from a machine nearby, these are not side effects of cooking. They are the first course. They arrive before the food does. And they tell your brain something pleasurable is coming, so prepare to enjoy it. At home, your kitchen smells familiar. Not because it smells bad, but because your brain has adapted to it. This is called sensory adaptation. When your senses are exposed to the same thing repeatedly, the signal weakens. Your brain filters it out to save energy. So the smell of home cooking becomes background noise. But the smell of a restaurant you have never been in, cooking a dish you have never smelled before, that cuts through. Your brain wakes up. And that waking up changes how everything in that room tastes. Here is the part that most people find genuinely unsettling. The same food tastes different depending on who you believe made it. Researchers gave the same meal to two groups of people. One group was told it was prepared by a trained professional chef. The other group was told it came from a cafeteria kitchen. The food was identical in every measurable way. But the group who believed a chef made their meal rated it significantly higher. Not slightly. Significantly. Their brains received not just the flavor, but the story attached to the flavor. And the story upgraded the experience in ways their taste buds could not undo. This is why restaurant food carries a kind of invisible premium that home cooking struggles to match. It is not just that someone else made it. It is that your brain has decided someone with authority, skill, and intention made it. And that decision travels into your mouth before the food does. There is also something called the effort paradox. When you cook at home, you see everything. You see the raw chicken before it becomes presentable. You see the sauce that was too thin before you added more flour. You see the pan you burnt and had to scrub. You carry all of that information into the meal, and it quietly colors your experience. You cannot unknow the messy process behind the polished result. But in a restaurant, you see only the finished product. Plated, garnished, and placed in front of you by someone who makes it look effortless. Your brain fills the gap with imagination. And imagination almost always makes things seem better than reality. Now let's talk about something your brain does that it never tells you about. Novelty. Your brain is wired to pay attention to new things and ignore familiar ones. This goes back to millions of years of evolution. New things in the environment required attention because they could be threats or opportunities. Familiar things were already processed and stored. So your brain evolved a system where repetition gets less and less mental energy over time, and novelty gets more. At home, your food is familiar. Same dishes, same pots, same smells, same table. Your brain has processed all of it and filed it away. It is not paying attention anymore. But walk into a restaurant with a dish you have never tried, plated in a way you have never seen, and your brain wakes up completely. It allocates more attention, more processing power, more emotional bandwidth to the experience. And when your brain gives more attention to food, the food tastes better. Not because the flavors are stronger, because your brain is actually present for them. There is a social dimension to this that most people completely overlook. Think about when restaurant food hits the hardest. It is almost never when you are eating alone. It is when you are with someone. A friend, a family member, someone you like being around. And that is not a coincidence. When you share a meal with people you care about, your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding chemical that creates feelings of warmth, trust, and connection. That emotional warmth does not stay separate from the food. It bleeds into it. You are not just tasting the meal. You are tasting the company, the laughter, the feeling of not being alone in a room. Home meals can have this too. But restaurant meals are almost always social by design. You go out as an event, a reason to be together somewhere that is not the ordinary space of your daily life. And that exceptionalism, that feeling of this is a special moment, changes the chemical environment in which you are consuming your food. And even after the meal is over, your brain keeps distorting the memory in the restaurant's favor. Psychologists call this the Pekin rule. When you remember an experience, your brain does not average out every moment. It focuses on the most intense moment and how the experience ended. So if one dish during dinner was incredible, your brain will upgrade the memory of the entire meal, including the parts that were ordinary. And if the night ended well, with good conversation or something sweet or a moment that felt good, your brain marks the entire experience as positive. That distorted memory becomes your craving. The next time you think about going to that restaurant or eating that type of food, you are not craving what actually happened. You are craving a version your brain has edited, polished, and made better than it was. You are chasing a memory that has been upgraded without your permission. And then, underneath all of this psychology, there is also the simple physical truth. Restaurant food is often engineered to be more intense than home cooking. More salt than most people add at home. More fat in the cooking process. More layering of seasoning at different stages. Chefs are trained to build flavor in ways that home cooks rarely practice, not because home cooks are less talented, but because home cooks are not trying to trigger a neurological reward response. They are trying to feed people they love with reasonable ingredients in a reasonable amount of time. Restaurants are trying to make you feel something immediately. Those are completely different goals. And intensity of flavor almost always wins in the short term because your brain is wired to respond to strong signals. So here is what is actually happening every time restaurant food hits different. Your brain is not just tasting food. It is processing a carefully constructed experience made up of anticipation, environment, smell, music, lighting, story, novelty, social connection, and a distorted memory of the last time you were there. All of that collapses into a single moment when the food touches your tongue, and your brain cannot separate any of it. The flavor and the experience arrive together as one thing. That is why restaurant food tastes better. Not always because it is better, but because your brain turns the act of eating outside into something your kitchen was never designed to be. An event. A reward. A moment that feels different from the ordinary flow of your day. And the most interesting part is this. Now that you know this, you have the power to bring some of it home. Slow down your meals. Set the table with intention. Eat without your phone. Light something warm. Share the meal with someone. Create anticipation before you sit down. Your kitchen cannot fake a restaurant. But your brain does not actually need the restaurant. It needs the experience. And experience is something you can build anywhere. If this changed the way you think about something you do every single day, hit like and subscribe. And drop a comment below telling us the one meal that always hits different when you eat it outside, and why you think that is.